Jugram Haschwalth. Jugram Haschwalth, Yugarama Hashivaruto, is a Quincy and the Wandenreika's Sternritter Grandmaster, Shudarenritter Gurando Masuda, Japanese for highest ranked of the band of Star-Crossed Knights, with the designation B, the Balance. He is also the advisor to Emperor Yawach and the substitute as the monarch when Yawach sleeps, as well as the second-in-command of the Wandenreik. As a young boy, Basby followed Haschwalth when the latter was hunting rabbits, one of which he shot with his spirit weapon after Haschwalth failed to do so himself. Basby criticized Haschwalth's skill, and when asked who he was, told Haschwalth to introduce himself first while inadvertently revealing his own name, prompting Haschwalth to introduce himself in turn. Noting Haschwalth's cunning in getting him to introduce himself first, Basby explained that he has been following Haschwalth because he did not think the latter could hunt anything himself. However, Haschwalth noted that he could not even form a Heilig Bogen like Basby could yet, which prompted Basby to claim no one else could do it because he is a genius, which was why Haschwalth should not feel bad. Admitting this was true, Haschwalth asked Basby to stop calling him Yugo before revealing that he lived with his uncle. Haschwalth explained how he needed to catch at least one rabbit and began to walk away, but Basby threw the rabbit he killed at Haschwalth's head and claimed he was not hunting for sustenance anyway before tossing his shield away. Climbing up a tree, Basby told Haschwalth that he would teach him whatever he wanted to know and that they would be the strongest Quincy around before leaping away. Afterward, Haschwalth was found by his uncle, who scolded him for going so deep into the woods. Half a year later, Yawach began conquering the northern lands where Basby's village was located, during which he burned down Basby's village and the nearby forest. Afterward, Basby told Haschwalth that they would kill Yawach, but when Haschwalth questioned whether he had to come with him, Basby pointed out how Yawach also burned down his forest before telling him to live with his uncle if he was okay with this, only for Haschwalth to reveal his uncle died in the fire as well. Basby and Haschwalth used the money they found in the remains of the village to survive and train for 5 years in order to kill Yawach. Despite his best efforts, Haschwalth was unable to develop his skills as a Quincy, to the point where he was unable to even collect Rapier in order to form weapons. Basby theorized that he was the rumored Quincy born once every few decades who was incomplete. To compensate for this, Haschwalth worked hard at honing his skill with his sword and his bow. Eventually, Yawach's personal guards came to a nearby village to announce the formation of the Sternritter. Witnessing this, Haschwalth noted that they were lucky to have learned about this while chasing the Wandenreika's flag, but was disturbed by Basby's expression upon hearing this news. When Basby tried to sign both of them up to join the Sternritter, Haschwalth tried to stop him, and was later shocked when Yawach himself arrived and selected him to be his right-hand man, as Haschwalth was his other half. Yawach declared that Haschwalth was to join his Sternritter and prepared to leave, but Haschwalth claimed he had made the wrong decision. Despite Hubert's warning, Haschwalth pointed out how he lacked skill with his Quincy abilities before stating that Basby would make a much better right-hand man for Yawach, but Yawach merely noted that this was just as he had foreseen before revealing that Haschwalth was a Quincy who shared his ability to empower others. After explaining how he was the true source of Basby's prodigal powers, Yawach told Haschwalth that he needed him by his side, and when Basby fired a Heilig file at Yawach in an attempt to kill him, Haschwalth caught it with his hand. Soon after, Haschwalth joined the Sternritter, and at some point became the captain. 3 years after first meeting Yawach, Basby joined the Sternritter as well and began challenging Haschwalth to combat multiple times, only for Haschwalth to refuse every time because doing so was punishable by death. On one such occasion, Hubert, who had been watching, noted it must be annoying to be pestered by a new recruit before wondering if Haschwalth does not seem influential enough. After Haschwalth stated he would follow his example, Hubert offered to teach Basby a lesson and claimed Yawach would not know if no one saw, only for Haschwalth to remind him that he was watching. Appearance. Haschwalth is a tall young man with a thin build and long blonde hair, which descends past his shoulders, and blonde eyelashes. His usual attire is a variation of the Sternritter's typical white uniform, consisting of the Order's signature hooded cloak, a calf-length trench coat, thigh-length in the first attack on Seoul society, commensurate of his rank with dark green fur running down from his left collar to the front of the coat, a green belt with a golden belt buckle, along with white trousers and shoes. When informing Yamamoto of the coming war, his cloak had been exchanged with a hooded cape, which featured a black mask and a thin black sash diagonally encircling his body from the cape's left epaulette. As a child, Haschwalth wore a light-colored dress shirt and carried a bow and arrow for hunting. His hair was also much shorter, only reaching his chin. As a teenager, Haschwalth wore a sleeveless black shirt and light-colored pants, as well as white gloves. He carried a medium-sized double-edged sword in a black sheath at his hip. After joining the Stern Ritter and becoming the captain, Haschwalth wore a dark-colored cape and a standard Wandenrake cap. Equipment. Broadsword. In the present day, Haschwalth wields a long-handled cruciform broadsword, with which he effortlessly sliced apart the blade of Ichigo Kurosaki's Bankai, Tensai Zangetsu. Haschwalth keeps the button he received from Bazz-B on the sword's hilt. Energy blasts. Haschwalth can fire blasts of energy from his sword, which have 4 points curving back, one on top, one on the bottom, and one on each side. Bow and arrow. During his youth, before Yhwach inducted him into the Stern Ritter, Haschwalth carried a normal bow and a quiver of arrows to compensate for the fact that he could not form a Heilig Bogen or Heilig File. Sword. During his youth, before Yhwach inducted him into the Stern Ritter, Haschwalth carried a normal, long-handled broadsword with a black sheath to compensate for the fact that he could not form any weapons out of Rapier. Powers and abilities. Soul distribution power. Tamashi o Wakatiru Chikara Haschwalth is considered to be the only other Quincy besides Yhwach with the ability to impart his power onto other Quincy, the first in 200 years since Yhwach's birth. Unlike other Quincy, he cannot naturally absorb Rapier from his surroundings. His natural ability is to give to those around him instead. As a child, Haschwalth was not even capable of creating a Heilig Bogen or Heilig File. However, he has since overcome this natural barrier and has learned to absorb Rapier as an adult. Since they both share the same ability, Haschwalth is considered by Yhwach to be his other half. Power amplification. Simply by being in another Quincy's presence, Haschwalth can increase their power. He was able to enhance Bazz-B's powers, causing them to develop at an incredible rate. When Yhwach first encounters Haschwalth, Yhwach states that he amasses his power by taking back the power he grants, and Haschwalth was powerless as a Quincy because he could not do this. Sleep-induced power swapping. Haschwalth and Yhwach are dichotomous in their relationship as two sides of a balanced scale, which their powers are swapped between each other when Yhwach falls asleep. By Haschwalth's admission, his own power is more suited toward combat than Yhwach's. The Almighty, Ji Oramedi, Japanese for all-knowing and all-powerful. At night, when Yhwach falls asleep, Haschwalth acquires the Almighty, which splits his irises and pupils into 3. With the Almighty, Haschwalth can see into the future. However, he cannot alter the future like Yhwach can. The balance, Zabaransu, Japanese for world harmony. Haschwalth can take the misfortune that occurs within his sphere of influence and disperse it to those that have experienced good fortune, which he believes maintains balance in the world. This was demonstrated when he executed Song-Du despite the latter's defensive ability, as Tsang's good fortune was shifted by the scales of balance tipping. All the misfortune that would occur to him personally is redirected into his Freund shield. Consequently, all good fortune that an opponent experiences in inflicting wounds upon him will be wreaked back upon them in equal magnitude as misfortune, and the misfortune that he experiences merely gets deflected and absorbed into his Freund shield, causing his opponent to experience even more misfortune. Shadow. Haschwalth can create a large portal in the shape of a 6-pointed cross by generating a shadow in his hand before dropping it onto the ground. Soldat can move through this portal to invade areas. The key, Kajuo. Haschwalth can summon a passageway to the royal realm through unknown means. To do so, Haschwalth draws and raises his sword above his head, causing light to shine from the tip and cast a white Hegel rune on the ground. Haschwalth, Yhwach, and Yuryu used this to travel to the royal realm in the form of a damaging beam of light that released a discharge of energy strong enough to blow away and separate surrounding combatants. Rapier manipulation. As a Quincy, he primarily absorbs spiritual energy from the atmosphere, and combines it with his own spiritual energy to form weapons. As a child and teenager, however, Haschwalth was completely unable to condense Rapier into weapons, forcing him to rely on a regular sword and bow. As an adult, he can gradually absorb Rapier in a way that is virtually unnoticed by others. Hirenkyaku expert. During his fight with Bazz-B, Haschwalth moved so fast that his movements and attacks were unseen until well after he had made them. Blut, Buruto, German for blood, Japanese for blood guys, a Quincy ability that gives one inhuman defensive and offensive capability. By making Rapier flow into their blood vessels, a Quincy can increase their attack and defense power drastically. Blood Vene, Buruto Vene, German for blood vein, Japanese for stilled blood guys, a defensive form of blood. It grants Jugram resistance to the intense heat in the general vicinity of Yamamoto's Bankai, Zenka no Tachi, which would otherwise reduce a person to ash. Great spiritual power. Haschwalth's spiritual power is on a level comparable to or greater than that of a captain-level Shinigami. As a teenager, Haschwalth managed to remain standing when Yawatch exerted his immense Ryatsu on those near him, despite almost everyone else, including Bazbi, being forced to lie flat on the ground from the sheer pressure. This is due to him being Yawatch's other half. Keen intellect, Haschwalth is a very perceptive man. He deduced that the flames covering Yamamoto's body when he was using Zenka no Tachi, Nishi, Zanjitsu Goki were actually his Ryatsu. He figured out that Yawatch intentionally created discord among the Wandenrake soldiers by naming Yuryu his successor. He deduced there was a trap within Nanao Ise's barrier because of the obvious weakness in the joints between the plates. Enhanced durability, Haschwalth is quite durable, having caught one of Bazbi's destructive Heilig file on 2 separate occasions. His durability has increased since childhood, though he bled when catching Bazbi's arrow as a teenager, he suffered no damage when doing so as an adult. Enhanced reflexes, Haschwalth's reflexes are fast enough for him to catch an arrow mid-flight. Expert swordsman, as a teenager, Haschwalth honed his swordsmanship for 5 years in order to compensate for his lack of skill with Quincy techniques. Haschwalth has proven himself to be a competent swordsman, easily slicing through Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu in a swift move and using the hilt of his sword to quickly strike Bazbi while the two were engaged in close-range combat, as well as cutting off Bazbi's arm and grievously wounding him with a single slash each. He was also able to deflect one of Yuryu Ishida's Heilig file with expert precision. Archer, as a child, Haschwalth was a poor archer, unable to hit even an immobile bunny from a few yards away. However, while training for 5 years to kill Yawatch, Haschwalth honed his archery skills in order to compensate for his lack of skill with Quincy techniques. Spirit weapon. Freund Shield, Furointo Shiruto, German for Friend Shield, Japanese for Substitute Shield, viz. Sacrifice Shield. At times, Haschwalth also wields a hefty and bulky shield on his left arm. The shield is composed of a gold Quincy Zaichin with its ground-facing limb extended past the others and solidified erasure between the limbs, giving it an angular appearance. Misfortune absorption. Rather than working as a defense against physical attacks, the Freund shield absorbs all misfortune that would occur to Haschwalth, such as injuries sustained during a battle. Furthermore, using the balance, Haschwalth can turn back the absorbed misfortune onto his opponent in order to further injure them. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.